Hello everybody, and welcome to week 3. This week we're starting Unit 2, Finding and Using Sources Effectively. As you can imagine, this week is going to be focusing on finding these sources, which you've already done some work with for your, for your research proposal, but we're going to kind of take that to the next level. We're going to keep developing that skill. And then after we find those sources, we're going to be looking at how to sort of effectively think about them and develop our understanding of them via the Annotated Bibliography. So this week you're reading 3 chapters from the book, Evaluating Information and Writing Annotated Bibliographies, as well as APA reference list. These are pretty important, definitely stuff you need to read. Evaluating information will help you sort of with the basics of what different types of information there are, how we can kind of look at information and see what is useful. It will talk about, it'll help you think about like scholarly, peer review versus popular. It'll get you like started on all of those basic kind of things that we need moving forward. And then chapter 12 will actually go in and tell you how you're going to be writing an annotated bibliography. So both of those are pretty important. The 2 assignments this week are the discussion forum about evaluating a website and the annotated build assignment. Just like the other research or like discussion forums, just like the other ones, these are mostly to get you thinking, to get yourself working on these bigger picture questions. I've read through the other ones, and you guys have been doing an excellent job. Some people could use a little bit more detail in their answers, but for the most part, it does look like you're seriously considering these topics, and that's very important, especially with the evaluating websites assignment, because many of you are going to sort of default to, at least in this first round of looking for research with the research proposals, but even here, although hopefully less, you're going to find yourself maybe gravitating towards less scholarly sources, and you're going to have to learn what in a website, what in a popular resource is usable, how can I tell what is and whether or not it's actually applied to what I'm doing. So that's basically what this assignment is. You're going to find a website, basically a source, and you're going to go through the basic steps of evaluation. You're going to think about who wrote it, when it was written, who it was written for, why it was written, and also who sponsored it, who paid for it. You're going to go through step by step and talk about these. You really, you want decent information about this. In the past, sometimes people just default to a single sentence or a single, maybe a fragment. You really want to dig into these and think, why was this written? Fundamentally, most things on popular source, sites, newspapers, magazines, even blogs, although you really should not be using blogs. But websites and magazines and kind of maybe trade organization papers, those tend to be a little bit more research based. But when you're looking at popular sites, you're going to look to yourself and say, okay, this looks nice. They're putting this out there to get people, to get those clicks, to get that advertisement, to get those ads, and that's absolutely true. But also, why does this specific article exist besides that? What is it trying to do? What is it trying to say? We know the big picture, it's all for the money, but there are the motivations of the article in and of itself. You want to know who the audience is for. If the audience is for somebody that already believes fully in the thing, then you might ask yourself, okay, is this actually credible, or is this just sort of trying to preach to the choir? Is this trying to get people up in arms? So there's all these things that you're going to be looking at, and they're going to help you determine whether or not these websites, whether or not these newspaper articles or magazine articles, potentially videos or documentaries. Is this something useful? Of course, we're talking about websites, so you probably aren't watching like full documentary for this because we're really not trying to do that here. But these are the kinds of questions that you'll be asking no matter what type of source. It's just I like focusing on websites because a lot of you are going to like stick to that as a default. I don't know why I still have that. Okay. So as always, go through that, do it to the best of your ability, comment on two people's posts. Also remember that specifically for this assignment, you want to include the URL of the website. So I can go through and look at it and, kind of compare your steps with my, compare your steps against the expectations of the assignment. I don't grade these discussion forums super hard, but, they're not meant to be like really difficult or anything, but they are meant to be thorough and engaged. So kind of keep that in mind. So the hope is with evaluating websites is not only will you understand the challenges of citing popular sources, but then you can transfer this information, this evaluation of sources into all sources. Because, just because something is scholarly and is research-based doesn't mean we have to stop thinking about evaluation, about credibility. For instance, even if something is published in a good journal, it might still have a strong political bent to it. It might still have like a bias to it. The organization that it's published through might be being funded by groups that have interests financially or politically in this topic. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not good information. It's almost impossible to be unbiased. So, we're going to find people are going to have arguments. They're going to have these biases. And that's okay. We just need to understand that and say, is this bias destroying their credibility? Because, of course, all of these research, or not all, but a lot of research is making arguments. This is a problem. This is a solution to it. There's nothing wrong with the bias of argument. It's just whether or not, the bias of the context of the situation is going to pollute the credibility. So that's basically, we're trying to learn how to target this at websites, which are a little bit stickier of a situation. You're more likely to go into those pitfalls, but we are going to move it and then try to also use it in other useful ways. In more, maybe, in situations that seem clearer. Okay. But the big project for this week is the annotated bibliography. Most people really don't like this assignment. In fact, most people come into this thinking they're going to hate the outline the most, and they think the annotated bib is just sort of going to be a throwaway. And I actually find it to be the opposite. At the end of the semester, almost everybody says that the outline was super helpful, and almost everybody just still hates the annotated bibliography. Not to start this on a negative note, the annotated bibliography is still very useful and important, but it is something that can kind of get on people's nerves. So I just want to foreground that. So what exactly is an annotated bibliography? So basically, it's going to be a description and an evaluation of your sources. Again, why we're starting with evaluation. For each of the sources that you end up picking for the annotated bibliography, you have to have 6 to 8 sources. At this point in the game, it's useful to have more sources for your final paper. Your minimum is going to be a little bit, it's going to be 5. But at this point, because you're going to be paring down, you're going to try to have a little bit more going on. But you're going to want to have 6 to 8 sources. And for each one of these, you're going to look at it and try to have the annotation, which is the written stuff. And there's going to be 2 elements to this. There's going to be a paragraph talking about the reliability and a paragraph talking about content. And this is exactly how it should be set up. You should have one paragraph that's having questions of reliability, and then another of content. Again, I just said that, but I can't stress that enough. A lot of people come in here just trying to do one summary paragraph and call it good, and that's not what we're trying to do here. And when we talk about content, we again, and like reliability, we're not necessarily just saying, oh, what is this about? We're actually trying to take specific things from the source, and we're trying to talk about it in a useful way to us. So when we're looking at reliability, there's 5 questions on each. You don't have to answer all 5, although the more you answer, the stronger your annotation is going to be. But even if you answer 3 of them, that's absolutely fine. Really, we're just trying to get thinking about these topics. So you're looking at, what do you know about the source, author? Is it scholarly peer-reviewed? Who's the audience intended for? Those are some of the reliability questions. Content, how does the source help answer your research? Should the source be used in your paper? That one's especially useful because a lot of the times we get through the annotated bibliography phase and we realize, some of the stuff is just not going to work with your research question. And that's okay. The research process is cyclical. You're going to go in and you're going to find a bunch of stuff and some of it's not going to work. And you're going to go out and look for more and you might find better stuff that replaces even some of the stuff you thought might have been good. Because your research question is also going to be, is going to have a lot of refining throughout this process. You might find that, by the time you're done with this annotated bib, maybe you've tweaked your research question, which then means in the future you need to get even more or better or different research. So that's kind of the thing about this, is you're asking these questions, you're evaluating these sources to know whether or not this is something you're actually going to use. And if you get to the end of one of these annotations and you realize to yourself, you get to this question and you realize, should this source be used? And the answer is no. That doesn't mean you did a bad annotation. In fact, sorry, I got excited, I guess. I was pounding around. That doesn't necessarily mean that you did a bad annotation. In fact, it could mean you did a very good annotation, because knowing something isn't going to be useful is just as helpful at this stage than not. You don't want to end up 2 days before the paper and juggling a source that just isn't doing you any favors, because then you have to find a way to fit that in your paper. It's better to get that stuff sorted out much earlier. Okay, so that's sort of the broad strokes of what you're going to do. The directions are a little bit more specific. There's a few more steps you need to go through, but that's why we're doing this and what exactly you're doing. Again, like I said, a lot of people don't like the annotated bibliography, so you might ask, okay, then why are we even doing it? And the answer is, kind of going back to what I said, you're trying to familiarize yourself with your specific research and evaluate that research and see if it's helpful, but you're also trying to get a lay of the land. If you spend an hour looking for sources and you find 8 sources or whatever, it might take you more than an hour, it probably should. And you realize you have to do more. You already know the keywords that have worked. You know which keywords haven't worked. So not only is this helping you determine stuff about this individual set of sources, but it's also helping you in your pool to look at more sources in the future. Also, by finding these sources and really looking at them, you can see the sources that they cite. You can go into their reference pages and look at their references. Of course, those ones might not necessarily be available through our databases, but still a good practice to do. And you might even be able to get those interlibrary loaned. There's also an annotated bibliography that'll show you exactly how I'm planning on grading this. So there won't be any mysteries. And yeah, just a quick point. This does need to be an APA documentation style. That's why we're reading the APA reference list this week. I don't expect everything to be perfect at this point because this is like the first time most of you are doing this. A lot of the scholarly sources, you'll literally just be able to copy and paste the citation. They'll just give it to you. But non-scholarly sources, that won't necessarily be the case. You'll have to generate it yourself. And so I don't expect you to be perfect at it, but I do expect that you put effort into it. I don't just want you to copy and paste a link. I need, the author's name, the date of publication, the title, at least the very basics of APA, even if you don't have it set in stone. What I will suggest is that I do include some examples of annotated bibliographies, and that is important. Sometimes people will go into this and they'll just try to wing it, and people that wing it sometimes do it successfully, they sometimes don't. But the students that go in and look at the annotated bibliographies and really see them as a step to success will often find that success. So that's something important to think about. Just look at those examples. They will help be a guideline to how to do this assignment. I try to include other examples in most of these assignments for the same reason. Okay. I don't like these to go much longer than 15 minutes, or else people don't watch them. So those are the assignments. Those are why the assignments are important. Read the evaluating source information. That is in very, very useful stuff. I'm going to pull it up right now because it's just really, really useful. There's the exercise taken from it that is just evaluating web pages, talking about URLs, stakeholders, this kind of stuff. It's all pretty useful. It's going to really get you in with all the information. And about as importantly, and this is something that a lot of people ask me again and again, and I always tell them, look in the book. The book tells you this. And actually, I don't say that because I'm not an asshole. But I do try to explain it to them and try to email and be like, hey, this is what it is. But the book does specifically talk about what a scholarly article is and what a popular source is. And that's really important because later on, basically immediately after the annotated bib, although I expect you to have some scholarly sources for the annotated bib, but you will need scholarly / peer review sources, and the book tells you how to do that. I can help you with that if you don't understand, or if you get lost, or if you need just a little bit of help. Sometimes it's good just to have that nice refresher, but that's something that's in the book, and it will be really helpful. Okay. Well, I hope that was useful. We did just a rundown of everything. I talked about the assignments and the importance of those assignments, why we're doing them, not just how to do them. Just a reminder, annotated bibliography is due on Sunday. And yeah, I hope this is useful, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.